Well, hello, hello, hello. Hey, today we're going to be talking about the area of a circle. Now, when we talked about circumference of a circle, you can see that we're going to be talking about the area of the circle, but we're also going to be having the 8A quiz, which is all of the triangle stuff and the angles. So make sure you're reviewing that so you're ready for that quiz. Make sure you've got 100% on the review. You will have to have 100% on that review to be able to take the quiz. It is a related quiz, not an essential quiz. But it will have a crippling effect on your grade if you do not take it. So make sure you've taken it. Okay, so we're going to talk about area of a circle today. So let's go look at that. So again, what we're going to be doing is using a formula. So you really want to get these formulas nailed down because the formulas we're teaching you now on the state test you'll need to know and on our test you'll need to know because you will not have a reference sheet for these. So you'll need to remember these. So you want to maybe even take a flashcard out and start making flashcards so you know these because you don't want to forget these and we don't know that you've learned these before. Okay? So remember when we talked about the circumference? The circumference was the measure around the circle. So it's like the perimeter of a circle, right? So remember we said that the circumference was going to be either the diameter times pi, or we were going to use 2 times pi times r, which is basically 2 times the radius times pi. And remember that 2 times the radius is the halfway point. Let's do a real quick review. If that's the diameter, what's the measure of the radius? Okay, that's going to be your quiz question. What's the measure of that radius? So one of the things you have to remember is that the radius is going to be half of the diameter. So half of 10 is 5. So this is 5 meters, right? And now one thing to remember, the diameter goes all the way across, right? And the radius goes from the middle out. And you could have the radius go here, you could have the radius go here, have the radius here. And the thing about a circle is if it's a radius, every one of these is 5 meters long. It doesn't matter which one. By the way, if we were to look, this right here could be considered the diameter also. And that's 10 because 5 meters here and 5 meters here is 10 meters. But the radius is a specific measure that would be 5 meters. Okay? So now when we did circumference, we would have figured out the circumference. And remember, the circumference is the measure around the circle. So the circumference would be diameter times pi, or since there's 2 radiuses, you have 2 times the radius times pi, which another way to write that is 2 times pi times r, right? That's how we figured out the circumference. We're also going to figure out the area of a circle, right? And we're going to use pi because pi is a significant part of the circle. It comes up with all of the information. If we were to do a quick little thing in class, we might be able to show you that on an applet and show you how that works so you can see where pi comes from. Okay, we say that the area of the circle. Now remember what we're talking about when we're talking about the area of the circle. We're talking about how to fill the circle, right? We're talking about that part of the circle. So the area of a circle equals pi times the radius times the radius. So that means we're going to have pi times 5 meters times 5 meters, which means we're going to have pi times 5 times 5 times meters, which is going to be 25 pi meters squared, right? Which then you go in and put it in the calculator, which means we're going to put 25 times 3.14, That's what we're going to use for pi. And we got to remember, we're still talking about meters squared. Meters squared is just how many square units it is, right? How much it takes to cover it. Okay, you calculate that out, and you get 78.5. 78.5 meters squared is the area of that circle. That's how many square meters of carpet you would need to cover that circle. 78.5 meters squared. Okay. All right. Well, now we're going to look at this one. Now, is that the radius? Or is 9 the radius? Or is 9 the diameter? That's the question you have to ask yourself. In every circle, you have to ask yourself, did they give me the radius or did they give me the diameter? Now, while you're thinking about that, do you know why triangles won't go on dates with circles? Yeah, because they're pointless. Okay, so here we go. Now, what we're going to do is remember that we're talking about that the formula for area is always pi r squared, which is pi times r times r. And if I were you, I'd write that out. Now, remember, I'm expecting that when you do one of these problems, that you're going to give me the formula. You're going to show me using the formula. You're going to give me the solutions with the formula. Okay, so hopefully you know that what you've got right here is the radius. Okay, so here's a quick question for you. If that's the radius, what's the diameter? And of course, that would be the diameter equals 2 times the radius. So that's 2 times 9. So the diameter would be 18 yards. Okay, notice that's to the first power because we're only talking one dimensional. Okay, if we look at this, then what we're going to do is substitute in. We're going to put pi, right? We have pi here. And then we're going to just multiply 9 times 9, which means, and that's yards. We got to pay attention to our yard units, right? So that's going to be yards squared. So this is going to be 81 times the 3.14. And then remember, we're going to call that yards squared for our units, right? Okay, plug that into the calculator, and you're going to get 254.34 yards squared. Okay, so this is different than their circumference, right? We're talking about that's how much space it takes to fill this circle. 254.34 square yards. Okay, circumference would be measuring around the circle. Well, this seems like a really good time for you to be able to practice what you've already done. So now what you should be doing is finding the area and the circumference of this. Let's see if you can do it. And go ahead and hit pause. Before you do, though, here's something. How many sides does a circle have? Just think about that for a minute. How many sides does a circle have? It has 2, inside and outside. Okay, now what you should be doing is hitting pause and doing these 2 problems. Figure out the area and the circumference. Remember, you got to be able to tell me units. You got to be able to tell me the solution, and you should be able to use the formulas. Okay, go. All right. So as you look at this, you should have gotten that the circumference is going to be 31.4 yards, and the area is going to be 78.5 yards squared. Now, that should look familiar, right? Because we did one with the diameter being 10. So you should have noticed that your diameter for this is 10, right? Because if you go all the way across, that's 5 and then another 5 yards here. So the diameter for this thing is 10 yards. So you would have said that the diameter, the circumference was 10 times 3.14, which gives you 31.4 yards. And now it's yards, not yards squared, because it's linear. And then you would have done the same thing with the area that we did before. Basically, you're saying that you have pi times 5 times 5, right? Which was 25 pi, which comes out to 25 times 3.14 is 78.5 yards. Okay, so the next thing, the last thing we have on here is we want to review a couple of things. So you have some review problems. We'll have you just do on your own, come to class, probably talk about them as bell ringers, okay? Or something similar. But then this one right here, the circumference of a circular field, is 194.68 yards. What's the diameter and the radius? Oh, so that means we're going to have to solve an equation, right? So we first would set it up and say, well, we know the circumference equals the diameter times 3.14, right? Okay. And we know that the circumference is 194.68. So can you solve that one? Go ahead. Let's see if you can plug the number into the, can you plug the number into the equation, solve for d, the diameter, and then from that, be able to tell me what the radius is. Let's see if you understand that part. Go ahead. Give that a try. Just hit pause and do this problem. Okay, so you should have gotten that the diameter was 62 yards, which means the radius would be 31 yards. Okay, because the radius is half. If you're looking at the circle, if that was 62 yards, then the radius would be 31 yards. Okay? And all you had to do is divide both 194 and both sides by 3.14. And I'm going to expect that you're using an equation and being able to show that you can set up an equation and solve an equation, because that's kind of a repeating idea in Math 7. Okay? All right. And then, we're expecting you probably already know how to do this. So you should be able to find the area of this shape. Just understanding that it's base times height. And remember the triangle, the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. We've talked about that in class before. So you should be able to do these two and be ready for what we're coming up to next. Okay. The cool thing is that one day I sent a circle to college, and it quickly came back the smartest object on the planet. I mean, really, because it had 360 degrees. Okay, hey, enjoy your day, and make sure you're reviewing this stuff. Make sure you know the difference between diameter and circumference. Make sure you know the difference in the formulas, because these formulas are going to be really important for the stuff we do next. And we know this is the stuff you've not seen before. So, hey, make sure you're coming with questions. Make sure you're ready to practice. It's going to be a good week. Have a good day.